Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming. We're going to be talking about designing the ordinary, and like this Fixie. And if you're all wondering why we're here talking about bikes, we're going to explain that to you pretty quickly. Also, just to know, we don't work for Specialized or anything. We're just using this as a prop to kind of demonstrate what we're doing. And I'm glad to be here. And thanks to everybody. About 3 years ago, I was at MIX and talked to the MIX promoters about bringing more creatives here, more design agencies, and they're certainly doing that this year. So I'm Byron from Texture Design. We're an agency in Seattle. We've been around for about 13 years, building blogs and social media, and also I publish Bike Hugger. We were just at South by Southwest at a big event there. Anybody there? Was it South by Southwest earlier this week too? Did you ride with us when we were there? The big event? Okay. And Kevin, go ahead.
I'm Kevin Tamura. I'm the creative director for a user experience web and mobile design agency in Seattle called Blue Flavor. I am also a bike hugger in the sense that I love to ride a bike, and I race on a bike, and sometimes I even crash on a bike, but that's few and far between. Anyways, thanks again for coming out today. It's early after the big party, so thank you again.
I missed the big party. How was that? I can't really see all your faces. Are y'all hungover and grouchy? Or? This hour is at least better because you're at least caffeinated. This is better than after the lunch hour. I did a talk in Amsterdam a couple months ago, and the morning after was quite a bit different than the morning after here. Everyone was pretty sleepy, pretty groggy, not a lot of activity until a lot of coffee. So we'll go ahead and get started. And of course, I like to keep these talks as interactive. Ask us questions along the way and kind of give you a frame of reference of what we're talking about today. So what we want to talk about is the ordinary. And what we're presenting today is that I've been around the web for most of my career, and we went from HTML minimalism all the way now to IE9 being announced. And what I see happening is that I think that as our tools have matured and as our browser support has matured, we've gone from HTML minimalism, which is we were just doing the barely minimum we could to get websites out that didn't break across browsers, now to almost this over-the-top, what I'm calling a ornamental design phase. And so I want to relate this to what cyclists do with Fixies and kind of then come back and Kevin will talk about some more design elements. And we really want to talk about simplifying design. Designing the ordinary means what if we're just making useful products that don't have all this ornamentation on it. So fixed is form and function. So this is a fixed gear bike here. Specialized did provide these for us. And the reason that I'm using this as a prop for this talk today is because Fixies were born out of a community that built a bike that didn't exist before. So years ago in New York and larger urban cities, messengers needed bikes that wouldn't break. Now, they couldn't find these bikes in the bike shops. They couldn't find them being built by the bike industry themselves. They built them from parts bins. Parts bins, they also took them off the track. So this is basically a track racing bike. This one has no brakes and a fixed drivetrain. And built them so that they could deliver packages. Now, you've probably seen them around towns. And this was before Fix was even hip or even urban or something that people thought were cool with skinny jeans and U-locks. It was really about form and function and about simplicity and about making something work. And they also didn't have a lot of money. So they just put these bikes together, brought over parts from Japan, from Kirin Racing, and they built something just for them that didn't exist. And so what I asked myself as I was figuring out what I'm going to talk about at MIX and other conferences, what if we did this? What if, as designers and developers, we gave our users tools to build their own websites? That's something that they could use. Probably would look a lot less like Amazon and probably more like Google or Bing, right? Real simple stuff just to get done what they needed to do. And we have to resist that temptation to add all these features on. I certainly do it myself in the websites that we built. So like I said, built from parts bins, very simple. Now this one, years later, the industry caught on and started making them for cyclists to purchase. But again, it was just straight from not working. And the reason it was called a fixed gear is there's no free will in there and drivetrain to turn it so that there was absolutely nothing to break down through rain, through all kinds of weather. And of course, an element of being a badass that you can pedal a bike on the street without any brakes. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so with that, the fixed gear is it's kind of become in our culture this very modern, very hip thing to ride. But when they really create them, they want something, again, as Brian was saying, that wouldn't break down. And you see the messengers in the urban cities, they're riding in between cars and everything. They get hit, they get dinged up. If they had something that was aluminum or carbon fiber, which was available on the market, they'd be destroyed, and not only would they no longer have transportation, they'd be out of a job. And so the whole idea that this grassroots movement to build something for them that would enable them to do their job is so minimalist, is that they didn't need anything else except for getting around.
Right, and another point that they did is they wanted to build these bikes to ride forever. Now, of course, now I should ask, is there any bike haters in the room? Because you're in the wrong talk. There is. So we can talk afterwards if you like. So anyway, so they also built them to ride forever. Now, this is a bike, of course, in Amsterdam. Now, the reference point in here in Amsterdam is their version of transportation is the bike. I mean, their entire city, they have 2.5 bikes for every person there. They got like 1.5 million bikes in that city. Of course, it's a European city with small streets, and cars aren't that compatible, and they never built it different, and that's okay. But the point that, to me, when I go over there, of course, as someone who's into the bike, is you see that this is just a transportation function. That even what they have as an SUV is what's called a backfeet, and that's a box bike. With a box in the front, they put 2 kids in, racks on the bike, 2 kids in the back, and a mom in business attire and a briefcase riding to work. That's their version of a Ford Explorer. So, great, I mean, that's cool for bike culture and everything, but what that means to you is, again, they built this out of utility, and I think we can do crossover from industrial design, product design, people that are building things just for themselves to use outside of an industry providing it to them, into web design, and look at how we build what we build. And what if we gave them tools that say, here, go make this? They probably wouldn't add a Facebook widget to the side of their bike, and they wouldn't add a Facebook widget to the side of their web page, right? Now I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go through. PBS.org suddenly has Facebook widgets for whatever reason. I really don't know. We'll get into that in a second. So this is a product that I made called Clip and Seal. And again, I want to talk with you about this because relevance to simplicity and design. Now this is an omega-shaped clamp and then a rod. And what this did was simply close a bag. And as a product designer during the dot-com crash, I came out, I'd been working at a company called Webforia. And check this out, we built vertical business market communities. Anybody work for Webforia here? Okay, yeah, so we work for Webforia, great name too. By the way, how I knew it was going to crash was when the CFO stopped showing up for work for 3 weeks in a row. So anyway, so come out of the dot-com crash, and designer developer, what am I going to do? My wife's like, you got to do something or I'm going to kick you out of the house. You're driving us all crazy. And this was the time when you sent out 1,000 resumes and nothing came back. All of your friends were out of work. Actually, also where blogging came from. I'll get to that later. But so when I made this, what I wanted to do was figure out a way to make chips fresher and coffee fresher. And so we looked at a variety of different products, chip clips, fulcrum design. And why I'm showing this to you, it was the hardest project I ever did. And this is probably the simplest product you've seen. Just, again, it's a rod and a clamp, closes a bag, real simple. And massive amount of work went into reducing it down to how could we close a bag effectively, keep the air out of it so the product stayed fresher, didn't have springs to break, was dead simple, easy, manufacturing, LDPE, sending to factories, don't want China to rip off our IP, a lot of stuff like that. So if any of you have ever heard of Clip and Seal, the blogging that we did, this product flew in the space shuttle. It's being used by the American Museum of Natural History. All this crazy stuff happened because we put it out there and were rewarded back with people who needed to seal stuff that didn't want it to break, industrial uses. One of the craziest ones was it's been remediating weapons in Iraq. I know, it's a crazy story. But also, the British Antarctic Survey is using that. So I'm not here to pitch you on, of course, purchasing Clip and Seal. That's not why I'm here. But what I wanted to share with you was that, again, hardest thing I ever did, and I really took a lot from that when the economy picked back up and we started doing design work again. It's like, okay, what can we do to reduce stuff down into the minimum and just make it work? Not so easy. Do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, it's, again, you look at this product and it's very simple, but the man hours and just the thoughts and ideas, because you could use springs, you could use clamps, you can do a variety of things, but you wanted to get rid of all that because eventually those things fail. And Clip and Seal, I haven't seen them fail. I mean, I put mine in the freezer over bags, and even in sub-zero temperatures, it doesn't break when I pull it out. So again, it was something that very simple, very ordinary. We all look at it, it's like, oh, I could have thought of that, but we didn't. And Byron spent hours kind of toiling over how do I make this so that it just fits right and is usable and does exactly what he needs and nothing more.
And also I want to add that was all done with marketing of less than zero, of course. That's what we call sweat equity. But I want to share with you too, I don't know if she's here in the room, but I don't want to embarrass her, but here early on, you probably all know this face. This would be, Molly's a big fan of Clip and Seal. There she is here talking to you about Internet Explorer this week, I'm sure. So anyway, that's how the product works. And here's my father using the Space Mondo. This is the one that went in the space shuttle. All right, so enough of the Clip and Seal story, but what is interesting is anytime the space shuttle flies, I'm glued to the television hoping to see it. I've never seen it. I'm hoping that it'll actually fly through space and orbit the Earth, you know, but anyway, it doesn't. So, come back over here. So, and maybe, we'll get into Kevin's part of the talk here, maybe kind of you guys can also design the ordinary from what we're telling you about. So, the context is simple Fixies, very simple product that they made themselves. I made a product that was simple, hardest thing I ever did, and what can we do as designers to kind of make that ourselves and developers? And the ordinary means, what if we're just making a utility and a tool? So a few years ago, I was a member of the Web Standards Project, of course, Molly and all those others, and I kind of got into the point where I was like, browsers should be like toasters. You should really, you know, the URL should you plunge down the URL, out pops the web address on the other side, too. So we'll get into some of that as well. Okay, you ready? So simple is minimal and your friend. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so a lot of times when we talk about simple, people kind of think, well, simple, but that's not cool. That's not, you know, I'm not going to be able to communicate my message with a simple design or, you know, simple coding practice. And actually, we're going to show you some work later that is very simple, but yet nails it to the T and communicates far better than any kind of overly done flashy widgets and other things with design. So when we talk about simple, it doesn't mean boring, but it means, you know, hitting it just right and communicating exactly what you need to without adding anything else that will interfere with your message. And we'll get into that a little bit later down the slides.
Go ahead.
So Mark Sandman was a brilliant musician who stripped down a band to 3 elements: a baritone sax, a 2-string bass, and a drummer. And his idea was, it's all about taking away. When you can't take anything else away, that's when you know you've hit it. That's when you know everything is where it needs to be. And so this is kind of what when we talk about simplicity in design, this is kind of what we're talking about. This is what we say. It's like you take everything away to where if you took something else out, it would crumble. But you just reduce and reduce until you get to that sweet spot.
Any Morphine fans in the audience? All right. It's always a thrill for me to be able to work a quote from Morphine into a presentation, so we indulge just in that a little bit. Thank you.
So the ordinary in design. So this is not a new idea. In fact, the idea of ordinary and simplicity in design stretches all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century with the Bauhaus movement. So the Bauhaus was a school of thought that has permeated design thinking and aesthetics for over 100 years, and this school of thought was only around for 14 years. Now, they came about after the Second or the First World War, where they saw destruction and just chaos from everything that happened, and they said, wait a minute, let's rethink these things. Let's rethink design, because up to then, design was almost art. A poster for a perfume product was this very illustrative piece of work where it's like, that's beautiful. And then he's like, oh, it's an ad. And so they said the communication is getting muddled with this beautiful artwork. The message is getting lost. And so they kind of said, you know what? We're done with this. We're going to be very strict, very simple. It's going to be text. It's going to be an image and, you know, maybe a couple bars to actually add emphasis. But that's it. There's nothing in the Bauhaus thinking and their design that actually does not communicate or add to the message. Now, this piece by Herbert Byers for a talk by Kandinsky is one of my favorite pieces because it shows the aesthetic so beautifully. There's nothing in this poster that you could take away that wouldn't affect the way it's viewed. And in fact, they even tweaked it a little bit by putting it on a 30-degree axis. Now, the thing behind this is Herbert Bayer, when he did this and he twisted it just like that, had a huge falling out with his mentor in the Bauhaus. Because he said, no, that's adding something to it that doesn't belong there. But yet, if you take this and you tilt it just right, meh, it's not as good. But that accent is just beautifully done. And again, it's one of those elements that you cannot take away and have the emphasis and the message be the same. And this is, when we get into design and web design, this is what we're trying to go for, is that let's reduce these elements down to just the bare minimum, to just what we need to communicate the message.
And for some context, your 30-degree access is like, it could be a shirt, but Kevin's firm, all the signage around that you're seeing as you come in, they worked on that, and they also worked on the MIX site. Is one of the reasons he's here to talk about that. So he's a shy guy, and he's not going to take credit for, hey, check out that beautiful sign, but he told me about it as we were coming in. So
I just did the style guide. So
are you ready for the next slide?
Yeah. Okay. So it's easy to talk about simplicity. It's easy to look at the masters and say, yeah, that's what we should be doing. But real world, we got other things to do. And as again, Herbert Bayer had a falling out with his mentor when he did what he did. But it's not easy to do, and especially in today's market where everybody wants everything on a web page, especially on a home page, like Versus.
Well, what's interesting about this is, being a Tour de France fan, of course, and Lance Armstrong and cycling, is they bring us the sport. But I hate to look at their website, and I don't particularly want to. We're not here to really criticize anyone. We're just kind of sharing the thought, and I'm sure there was reasons that they have the bass and the hip and the playlist and the tabs and the versus.com, which by the way is in beta, because everything's in beta on the web. And then I think what really interested me here is, for some reason, in all the stuff they're doing. Now, this is a national broadcast network that's coming into your home, showing you programs. They have a Donkey Kong game over there. I don't really know I don't know if they're hoping to get 5 cents a click-through on a Donkey Kong game, or what exactly they're doing, if this is a source of revenue from them. Really kind of strange to kind of figure out exactly what's going on. And every year, with a captive audience, there's all kinds of complaints about Versus and the way that they show the Tour de France online, because they bury it in video that you have to sign in for, and then you're on their mailing list, and it's like, just give the people what they want, which is the access to the information. And I took this screenshot a little while ago, so I wanted to come back and see what they're doing today. Maybe they got rid of Donkey Kong Jr. Let's see here. And let's take a look. The future of wireframes. And hopefully my connection will not crap out on me here. I can go wired if I need to. We need the Jeopardy song. Can anybody hum that?
There we go.
Okay, here we go. All right, so yeah, Contador and Lance are fighting. Whoa, this is this giant pull-down menu. Here's the reader board. Here's the flash. Now, you're all familiar with Apple and Adobe arguments, so my browser may crash and my computer will start spinning because of all this flash. So let's see, is the bass going to show up? So I think what we're trying to show here again is not to beat up on Versus, but wow, what exactly is going on? Okay, here's the spawner. Here's the spawner, and he's down here now. He's coming out of Florida. Here he is too. And this poor fish, he always has this thing in his mouth. So I kind of feel bad for them. I'm sure there's a fish lobby that's lobbying Versus to get rid of that. So I think that's just a great example of what we're trying to do. And I think what is also happening here is that your goal to come to Versus is to watch either football or rodeo or whatever you want to watch. Doubtful you want to see all this other stuff. That is a pretty good look from Lance, though. I'll give him that.
So who do you think is going to win, Contador or Lance? Anyone follow cycling here? Oh.
Contador.
Yeah, I think Lance is going to do it.
Okay, so we want to read more. We're going to check this, see what happens. So, all right, we'll plug back over to the presentation.
Yeah.
Any questions on this so far, on what we're talking about? We're here to help you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And as we were saying, it's not easy. It's not easy doing simple and beautiful design, especially when you've got clients that are always, asking you for this or that and kind of saying, well, I hear everybody is on Facebook, or we need a Twitter account, or we need to be on YouTube, so can't we just slap up a badge there or something? And that happens all the time. We're constantly having to deal with that as designers and developers. And so, it's a tough road to hoe. And, this Philadelphia site is beautiful. It is absolutely stunning, and yet there's kind of something there.
Well, and it's hard to see, and I apologize, I didn't realize it would turn out so hard. I don't have a pointer here. I can try to zoom in. What I want to show you here is even this is Happy Cog, one of the premier design firm. And what is here? I think I'll make it worse if I try to zoom in, so I'll just stop doing that. What's up there is crammed, and you can look online too, but crammed in this font. So they have Philadelphia and the countryside, and right there between the E and the R symbol of the E, because the countryside is registered, it says beta. And so the question is, what about Philadelphia is beta? I'm really not entirely sure. Okay, I can see Versus is beta. They have a thing with the fish. Got it. But what possibly, I think that's where the bell is. I think it's been around for a couple hundred years. And so what that is guaranteed, and we're not, thank you, I will try not to blind anyone in the audience or myself. Right there. So there's a beta right there, and you can, of course, see that online. And I think what this was, because I asked him about it, and this was a client coming up right at the last minute and saying it has to be beta. Dear client, why does it need to be beta? Has to be beta. We have to ship it tomorrow. So what happens? I'm sure there's a flurry of emails, Basecamp messages, back and forth. Put beta on it, get this damn thing out the door, we move on to the next client. And we're going to get into kind of the business of that as we go through the presentation too, is working with teams and how to ensure that you're doing your job, designer and developer, not letting stuff like this happen. In the midst of all this site, of course, me as this designer type, that's the first thing I keyed on, is what about Philadelphia is possibly beta. Rest of the site, phenomenal. Great job, guys. But again, do we need to do that? And it still says beta. They didn't listen to me. I tried to get them to.
It's the client. It's one of those things where sometimes there's battles you have to pick, and the client won this one. But you look and you play with that site, and it's a very thoughtful reduction. There's not anything there that doesn't need to be there. So they did a great job for the rest of it, and it's a tremendous piece of work.
And the site is Visit Philadelphia. It's a tourist site for Philadelphia. Now, there are other issues with Philadelphia's logo, but we'll save that for another time. That's also some issues about that, as I think that's been being debated online. You want anything else on this slide?
No, I think we'll move to the next.
All right.
Yeah. So when it comes to design, we want to make something iconic, something that lasts. This is an innate need in all of us, whether we're designers or developers or project managers. We want something beautiful. A lot of times, though, we kind of forget what that is, and we think, well, if we slap this on, or if we do this or that, we don't think about maybe just reducing it down to its core elements, to the simplicity of everything. Now, again, this is another fixed gear bike, but yet it's a little different from the one you see up here on stage, and yet it was kind of done as an art piece, and it stands out. And it's not that they added a bunch of errors; they just reduced the colors to 3, and 2 of the other colors are just spot colors, the red and the black, and yet it creates this very iconic feel for the bike with doing very little. And so, can we do this with design? Can we do this with the web work that we're doing? Can we do it with the mobile work that we're creating? And we can. We can definitely do these things. It's a matter of pushing it instead of saying, what can I add? Saying, well, what can we take away? What doesn't need to be there?
There's also, this is the Copenhagen wheel. And also, at the end of this presentation, this is all shared Creative Commons online. This is all on Flickr. And we're pulling it into this wall of slides, so you're welcome to share that with all the links are included. This is the Copenhagen wheel, which is an MIT project. Considerable and massive amount of engineering going into that. So what that shiny red button right there is not just to look cool. That's actually an electric motor that charges while riding the bike and then gives you boosts as you're riding around town. So the engineers at MIT have been working on this for a while. They released it during the Earth Congress stuff. I can't remember what they were doing. There was I think it was the 8 or something. Anyway, there was a big environmental conference in Copenhagen earlier this year. I can't remember the exact name. And they showed this bike off there and had it around town. So you ride around on this bike, it charges up as you're riding, and it's not a fixed gear because that would rip your legs off as it would power up, of course, but it does power and then help you get up a system up hills. And I think what's really interesting and iconic about this photo and this bike itself is that all of this engineering went in, and it went into all being inside of that big shiny red button there. There's a brushless motor in there and all the electronics. Now, I haven't seen it work other than in demos. I don't have any reason to distrust MIT. I think it certainly isn't vaporware. I don't know if it's going to be marketable, but look at the amount of engineering, the amount of people hours that went into this, the amount of thought, and how simple it came out. Pretty phenomenal stuff. Again, in context to what we're doing as cyclists, but also then to design and development, that you can take complex things and make them simple and easy. Anything else on this one?
No.
Okay.
We're ready to go.
All right, how about some questions from the audience? You guys
Anyone
waking
got
up?
questions yet?
Okay.
All right.
We will feel bad if we don't get one. We don't have any paid people to ask us questions today. So.
Yeah. So
right.
when simple doesn't mean bland, doesn't mean boring. It means exactly, again, I keep saying this point, it means only what is necessary to communicate your message. Now, UX Magazine came out a couple years ago, and actually, this is one where they went for a very simple aesthetic, very kind of minimalist, and yet I think they missed on quite a bit because it's chaotic. Simple also doesn't mean chaos, and yet, there's not a lot of graphical elements, but every single article is on the front page. You've got a highlight on one, but the way it's actually running into everything is kind of confusing. And so simple doesn't mean bland, doesn't mean confusing. It means, creating, good, solid interactions and good, solid stories. And, with web, it's a clear hierarchy of what the message is. And when you come to this, I'm kind of like, oh, where do I go? Where do I start? And, that's missing.
I would like to hopscotch through it with chalk. With all those
hopscotch with chalk?
I would have a hopscotching avatar. Of course, you want to follow them on Twitter, of course. Make sure that's front and center.
In fact, the Twitter badge is almost as good as the spacing. What is it?
That's
thing of beauty.
That's an evil asteroid alien thing from Atari. And of course, balanced with lessons from IKEA.
Yes.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
Ready for the next one?
Yep.
Okay.
So let's pare it down to just the aesthetics for a website. Now, this is the website brochure for an MFA in interaction design. Now, when you think of MFA in interaction design, you would think, hey, it's going to be flashy, it's going to be big, it's going to be bold. No, they basically stripped everything out that wasn't relevant to their message, that wasn't relevant to getting the point across of what you're going to be applying to the MFA school for. In a sense, they learned that it was not so much as putting everything on the page, but creating quality interactions so that when you come to this, you read, you want to go down, you want to go deeper. It's a solid quality that, is missing a lot of times when we start working on sites because we just start throwing everything out of it instead of stripping elements away. And again, this is a very simple site, but yet it communicates so well. It is, it's memorable. You kind of think, you jump around to different sites and like, oh, yeah. And then this one's like, oh, hey, yeah, this is nice. This is beautiful. And, for getting a master's degree in interaction design, you kind of go, well, this is interesting. I kind of want to think about this because they're not slamming you with a bunch of jumping banners and spinning logos, which I've seen with a lot of schools, including my own alumni, Chico State. So it's just pared down to the essentials and communicating the message.
With the RSS feeds, of course, and no beta.
Yeah.
Right.
Just exactly what needs to be there. I mean, there's nothing more that needs to be there.
And how recent is getting an MFA in interaction design? Is that for your...
They are starting their second year right now. So are taking applications for their second year. And their school is in New York, which is on the wrong coast for me to actually go to.
Right.
So if you're in New York and you want to get a master's degree in interaction design, that's the school to go to. The teachers there are great. They're some of my friends and colleagues that are big thinkers. Jason Santamaria, if any of you know him, he's one of the teachers there. And the work out of his classes has been really good. Now, again, design or simplicity doesn't mean boring. It means a perfect balance of aesthetics and quality. Now, this site, and I hope I do not embarrass Matt too much, or Nishant, who just came in, but to me, this site merges beauty and aesthetic to a degree that is just phenomenal. Now, they've taken the simplicity of a magazine format, one that changes, one that's constantly got new content added, as well as some evergreen content that needs to be looked at. And yet, you can't take anything away from this site right now. You can't pull out the circles, it doesn't have the same power. You pull out the large rules, the type, it doesn't have the same power. And so they worked and created a site that is just beautiful and balances everything and is simple and ordinary, and yet by that, it stands out far above the crowd. And it's just a beautiful balance of the aesthetics.
And that makes you want to read that first article, right?
Yeah, you definitely want to read this article. You definitely want to jump in and kind of, dive in and go deep into the site. And it's fun. And again, simplicity does not mean boring. Ordinary does not mean boring. It means exactly what needs to be there to communicate the message.
And did you guys work on this one? Is that your
No,
your
that's Matt Brown, who is talking later today.
Everything
1:30.
brown things,
Matt?
Brown little things. Is he here?
Brown things.
Is he here in the audience?
He's here, yeah.
Woo-hoo. You're welcome.
So in simplicity, it's like Twitter. Twitter is one of the most simplest tools and websites we have, and yet I don't know if I can get around without Twitter right now, because especially I was in South by Southwest and I was here and I was Twittering, trying to find out where my friends were, what panels we're going to. But it's a simple interaction, and it's just down to the bare bones.
And this slide here is a Jack Dorsey sketch of the original Twitter, which was actually going to be my.stat.us, my status. And it later morphed into what we have today. And I think what's funny about Twitter at South by Southwest, they announced a widget as their big announcement. And to me, it's like, how about something useful, maybe like 150 characters? In each point release, could we get more characters? Please? I'm sure you guys have the bandwidth now. So I think what's fascinating to me about Twitter, and we're not here as evangelizing Twitter. I think that's been done enough. But what fascinates me is that, like I said at the beginning of the talk, I've been around the web my entire career and started building content management systems for the Department of Energy under a Boeing contract at Hanford, and we were working on environmental impact statements. And back then it was, how do we paginate a book online? I would go into arguments with people with how do you paginate? And so then that moved into doing work with Boeing and content management systems, and then HTML versions of the pages out of the CMS. And the thing about content management systems is you're building something the users hate. It's not a very rewarding career or a rewarding job to build something that people hate and don't want to use. And so when blogging came along, and I think the big revolution of blogging, besides the fact that we put millions of CMSs out there into people's hands and didn't even know it, was that you suddenly had people that all that they needed to do to update the homepage was type a subject into the title box, message body, just like an email, and then maybe some tags, maybe some categories, and hit send. And so we really reduced it down and got it down to making something easy. And I learned that principle then, if you make it easy, people will come and they will use it. And you don't have to fight them to do it. I would go into meetings with the VPs of communications on the corporate web team and say, okay, the way that we're going to get the people to use this is we're going to throw down an edict that says, you must use our CMS. You must use SharePoint on the network, and that's how it's going to be. Of course, what does everybody do? They find someone who will help them set up a wiki because they can't stand SharePoint, right? So, and that was back in the early days, and I realized a lot of progress has been made, so I'm not going to bash that. But the point is that with Twitter, Tumblr, Flickr, any of these tools, they've made it really easy, even easier than blogging. And I attribute the success of Twitter because it was even that much easier to publish content. And the problem with blogging, especially in corporate, aside from personal blogs and personal projects, and the people that blog a lot, including myself, that have this natural knack just to put out a bunch of digest stuff, is people would get anxiety. They'd reach the page and kind of stop, like, what am I going to write? Excuse me. I've got to make sure that I sound good, that I'm smart, especially engineers at Intel. So one of our projects is we built the Intel blog network, and that was one of the big holdups, is everything that the engineers wanted to write had to be a thesis paper of amazing stuff. Not just, hey, I was at MIX and I saw a cool thing. Or, hey, Kevin's doing a cool bike ride today, that kind of stuff. And I think that's really what Twitter did, was allow people just to go in, no pressure, write something maybe witty, maybe not. Hey, I'm at, the Sands tonight, whatever, and further reduce it down. Again, kind of establishing that you make the stuff simple, people will use it. And I think that comes a long way in content management systems and stuff that we're doing to be able to just allow people to do what they need to do to be able to find stuff. I mean, besides just being able to update the homepage, where's the travel documentation on the intranet? I mean, we worked with Boeing on an intranet system, and that's what we were helping them do. They couldn't find anything on the intranet, anybody, because they just didn't know where the stuff was. Of course, they didn't have robust searching. So enough on Twitter, but that's kind of, to me, that's my take when I see this product take off. And such an adoption rate I've really never seen before. Facebook, I understand, because they're doing the logic of connecting you to your friends, and okay, I want to be on Facebook with my friends. I get that, but just people to be able to pop on there and start doing what they're doing, pretty phenomenal. And that's aside from the marketing and SEO aspects. Just seeing people get on there and being able to share their content, pretty phenomenal. I think a statement to being able to build the simple, build the ordinary. It's just a text box that you hit send. Now, they can add features and new widgets and stuff all day long, but that's the basic function.
Yeah, and I'm actually one of those that's, when I try to blog or look at a piece of paper, I get very anxious, and I'll stare blankly at it, and it's like, yeah. But with Twitter, I can post thoughts or ideas or find friends, and it's so much easier. It's just like, bam.
I'm glad they didn't name it mystat.us, though. I don't think it would have had the initial marketing. And they did have the They did have it for a while without the vowel, like everybody else was doing, the vowelless E at the end there. So I think that's enough on Twitter. So now I want to talk about the boring part of the presentation, which is the business. I think Kevin can really help here too, just kind of talk through how can we do this, how can we own it? Because I think also what happens in website development and any stuff that we do is this tendency to continue to add on. I mean, websites and stuff that we do in general are like their own galaxies and own orbits. They create gravitational pull around them, and you keep adding stuff. And it reminds me of a project we did for a client that wanted us to add an accordion in the sidebar, a news accordion. No idea what he was talking about. 4 or 5 meetings, a news accordion. What is that? And I want to make sure I don't date myself, but I'm thinking what it was like, Mama's got a squeeze box thing? What do you mean, accordion? What is that? And what he wanted a headline function that the headlines would scroll, you'd click on them, and they'd expand down. Okay, so we had some terminology problems. First, like, why do you really want that? What is that going to do? But it's also setting those client expectations of, we're here as designers and developers to help you get this basic thing out. We've got our wireframes, we've got our comps. Let's stick to that and try not to pop beta on it at the end. So I'll let you kick into this one.
So the simplest way to achieve simplicity is through thoughtful reduction. And I've talked about this point a little bit already we talked about the design. But again, instead of thinking about what we need to add to our sites and to our designs and to our development, it's like, what can we actually take away? Does this element actually communicate to the overall theme and brand of the site that we're working on? Or does it detract? And so when we start asking these kind of questions to ourselves and to our clients and kind of pushing them, we kind of can say, okay, well, you know what, that really doesn't add something. And just to say, oh, we need it because everyone else is doing it, we need to start kind of saying, well, yeah, everyone else is doing it, but you don't need to, and this is why, because it's not adding anything to your brand. And then in any place, it might just be polluting, because you might want to go, it's like, oh, well, they're on Twitter, so I'll get information, but that Twitter might just be up there because everyone's doing it, and they have no one to actually monitor a Twitter feed. And so you start asking questions, you start asking for help, and there's no one there at the other end. So let's think about more of talking to our clients about maybe reducing those elements down and trying to taking away what's not necessary and asking, some more hard questions and kind of maybe we are kind of picking a fight with them a little bit, but it's more of, we're being business psychologists and saying, we need that. Like, I need a new car, I need a new wheel set. It's like, yeah, maybe I don't. Maybe what I have is working better than what I think the new shiny thing will be.
Well, exactly, and I mean, I'm guilty of this myself as a principal of an agency. I mean, you got hired, you won the contest to get in because you're the smartest guys in the room, right? And you want to come in and wow them with some over-the-top presentation of your awesomeness. But what our job is, and my job is to make the client and you guys the smartest person in the room by teaching you that, hey, you don't really need all this extra stuff. Well, we can do it. We've got the cred. We've got the people on talent. We can do some crazy stuff for you. But do we need to do that? And I think that's the challenge, especially when you come in from wowing them in a presentation to, okay, we wowed you in a presentation and we're going to make you a text box with a send button, right? Rock and roll. 35K, please. By the way, there isn't much business in consulting on Twitter because of that. What can I tell you? Go log in, create an account, and start typing? Yes, thank you. So anything else on this? And I guess ask the audience, are you guys living this? I mean, are any of you living this? Hey, geez, why do we have to put beta on that? Anybody want to share a story with us? You guys comfortable? All right. Oh, there we go. Hello.
I can't say that I'm a total designer.
Right.
I used to try and add things to
Yeah.
pages and so forth to illustrate the absurdity.
Yes.
And it doesn't often work.
Because clients will see that and they're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we want. And I'm guilty of that. I mean, especially it's like, oh well, I'm going to do 2 comps. I'm going to do one that's kind of over the top, garish, kind of just elements that aren't needed, and you're kind of like, oh, we want that, and then you're like, oh no, I use that as like the A/B test to say no, you don't want this, and then you've got to go down that rabbit hole, and every time you try to fight back and say, no, we don't really need that, it's like, oh, but it'll add right in. No, then we move this here and this here. It's like, and then you've got, a pile of widgets for a homepage.
Yes, go ahead.
I actually have to give you some grief.
Yes.
Saying, hey, why don't we get 150 characters? But your whole presentation is about how design brevity is the soul of wit.
Correct. So, nice quote. Yeah, you're correct. Yes.
No, we're using
I agree with that.
hashtags now, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's the problem because we want more space for our hashtags. But I think that was a pretty. But hey, hashtags are also ridiculous because no one can ever remember them. And I'll never forget this. Like, you go to conferences, like, what's the hashtag? Man, what's the hashtag? And I was like, I don't know. Why doesn't Twitter just figure that out for me? Everybody has their own hashtag, right? So meta tags, just tag whatever you want. I'm at Mix. Mix rules. It doesn't matter. So I want to get back to what you said. So you did the reverse psychology of this is so stupid, they'll see how it's stupid, and then they choose it?
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Or make it spin.
Yeah.
Yeah, the spinning logo.
So how dated I am, I don't know, does anybody remember Apple's hot sauce, MCF technology? Anybody build a website with MCF? Yeah. So MCF was fly-through websites. This fly-through website circles. It's cyclical, much like corduroys in fashion. Flying through a website comes back every few years, and we all want to fly through a website. And back in the early days, Apple had a technology to do that. It was called MCF, and I can't remember exactly what MCF stood for. Meta Concept Framework or something. I don't know exactly. But you tagged, you built a sitemap, and then there was this little thing you opened up, and you flew into the website and then picked a place where you wanted to go, right? Yeah, pretty cool. And there wasn't any blue people like Avatar, but it was kind of cool. And that was, again, one of my early things. It's like, why did I put this on the site? And I mean, I have it back in my archives. You go back through your archives and your server, and it's kind of like looking at old hairdos, what you look like at prom. Here's this crazy ass, flat through my website thing, irregardless of the content. I just wanted you to get to the about page through flying through. So it's pretty funny someone actually raised their hand on that. But I think again oh yeah, go ahead.
I had a situation where a project came in and all it was a pile of widgets is what they wanted.
Yes.
They had about 7 or 8 social networking
Yes.
accounts that they wanted a widget for each one of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes 2 or 3 for each Facebook account.
Yes. I call those the badges of courage. And we have one of those, and it was really crazy initially. I mean, I have been in arguments with clients about, do we really need to put this on here? I think your client can probably find you and maybe put it down in the sidebar, but do we have to have these badges of courage everywhere? I mean, like Mashable's insane. And it's got this massive thing on the bottom. It's like, and what I always ask, those share this things that pop out on the bottom of the page, or the share this links? So are there any metrics of people actually using those? Because if I wanted to share it, I think I could just share it. I think I could cut and paste it, or I already have a bookmark like in my browser, or maybe I want to do that. But what are all of these things? So did you have a follow-up to that too, or?
Well, if I had reduced it at all, it would have been a blank page.
Yes.
So and really,
35K, please.
They didn't have a message. They didn't have anything really that they wanted to do. They just wanted a page, a placeholder for or a parking lot for all their badges, and that's kind of where you guys like. Well,
a
what
badge
are you
parking lot. I
about?
like that one.
That's what it ended up being, was a blank page, because they scrapped the project.
Yeah.
Was anybody actually feeding into their social
Oh, yeah,
networks?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
These were all full of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
That,
friend that works for one of those shared this companies. He's
Yes.
their director of community, and I'm like, how can you have a community around that? But that aside, they get like 65 million clicks per.
So people are actually clicking on this stuff.
People use it, and I'm like, oh, cool. How does that make you guys money? So yeah, we're just still trying to figure that out.
Right, right. That's a funny story. It reminds me of, like, I always feel sad. I did this crazy thing where I talk 4 times in a week. Would not recommend it. Doesn't make your wife very happy or your husband. So 4 talks in a week, and so I'm going through all these airports, and I see the I'm a bit jet lagged. I forgot the name. The Rosetta Stone. And I think that has got to be the saddest little stand in the airport. Right, the poor Rosetta Stone. I don't really need that, but I'm like, I want to just go up and talk to the guy because he's sitting there. And that's like those badges of courage. And like, someone must be buying them. Someone must be clicking them because they're there. But do we really need them, or are so many and that much? It just is an interesting question. I had no idea it was that. But also, I just want to add something to what you said about that. When I was at the Twitter conference last week, talking about tools, kind of a similar talk. And there's some Twitter people here at this conference too. I saw one of them in the hallways. I'm like, having access to an API does not an app make, right? I mean, just because I have not seen so much awful looking design come out of all these Twitter apps because it's all just data and numbers. And I don't see really anyone on budget designing these, bringing in a UX designer, making them look beautiful, maybe aside from Tweety and Brisley. And the reason being, as I figured out as we went out to the speaker dinner, none of them are making any money. Fascinating. I'm in an industry, a thriving industry with all this hope and promise. None of them have any business model coming in. Absolutely fascinating to share with you. Like, we haven't figured that part out yet, but money's coming in for we to build these tools for you to use. How are you going to make money on that? We don't know. So,
It's sad that venture capitalists will see, 65
yeah,
million clicks per whatever
yeah,
measurement, and they throw money at it.
yeah.
I just wonder, like, what do they think they're ever going to get back?
I guess they could put little pop-up ads as you're sharing. You know, like kind of like the taxi on the way in when it shows you ads as you're coming in. Yes.
I'm in this business for 15 years.
Yeah.
Some things are getting worse.
Yes, they are.
Back in the old days, I mean,
Yep.
the clients had no clue of what internet was. So
Yes.
I think they respected it a little more. Now
Yes.
It's so easy, it's so commoditized. The tools are so easy to use.
Yes.
And they send the wrong impression. Then you can pass everything with no consequences at all. Oh, throw something in, throw Twitter in, throw Facebook, throw link.
Yes.
So you have a whole bunch of things. And I think things tend to get worse. When clients think, your work is so easy, I can do that in PowerPoint, I can do it in Ink by myself.
Yes.
So what is your vision about that? Because the more technology spreads over our lives, the harder it is to show the true value of design and simplicity and everything. But it's so easy to add things up.
You can join us the next time we present this, though, because you're absolutely right. You said it in the 90 seconds, our whole presentation. Well done. I'm glad it's resonating, because we weren't really sure when we brought this talk here if it would resonate with you guys. I'm glad that it is. And you're exactly right. And I'm kind of lamenting it, because when I got my start, 17 years ago, we just did the minimum. I mean, the point was we were trying to reproduce print on the web. We've got beyond that now, building specifically for websites. Zeldman's a peer of mine, all these guys writing books and trying to help you figure out how to code across browsers. Yes, death to IE6, I was back there. Agree with all that. But now what has happened, we're kind of a victim of our own circumstances. Now we have what we want, and we're going all over the place. So with Typekit, the new ability to render fonts on the web, great. My first thought was, oh no, we're going to get Microsoft Word on the web again. It's going to come back, right? We had Microsoft Word on the web with all those crazy MSO tags. Okay, we're not doing that. Now it's going to come back, because there's going to be fonts all over the place. Because I don't think Veeam and those guys are limiting you to the amount of fonts you can buy, right? So when you purchase Typekit, you only get 3 fonts, and these are vetted, right? So that, to me, that's just, whoa, let's hold on and look at what we're doing. We're certainly amazing, though, at the same time, that my wife can get on and have a Tumblr blog and enjoy it and not have to ask me to help her. Great. But we're in this circumstance where now we have all this power. What can we do with it? Which brings me to this next slide. This is a colleague of mine, Gregors. He's a fascinating artist, and he works in the UK, does these amazing sculptures and boxes and films them and puts them on the web. I can share a link with you in this presentation. And he gave me this quote for this talk, which is, the web is ready for an art approach, but we unnecessarily overcomplicate things and later end up with websites that look like Santa puked on a Christmas tree. So I think myself that this could be a website, Puking Santa Websites. It could be a little meme saying, but I think we've all seen this and all done it. It's a pretty funny quote from Gregors. But as I was talking to him, what he was lamenting was what happened to artistry on the web. Okay? And I think what happened is social media came in. And okay, that's good. But like you were saying, it is so easy to create all this stuff. Now it's all kind of reduced out. Get your stuff out, doesn't matter. And that's what surprised me so much about the Twitter apps. Not to criticize anybody that's trying to make a business out of some great engineering they figured out to pull stats out of Twitter. Great. But it's just bang it out. And when did that become okay? When could we just throw stuff out there and that was acceptable as being something that people wanted, were paying for, or were willing to use? And maybe I'm getting old, and it's time for the young Turks to come in that don't care what we have, some design aesthetic we have. But I think it's still important to not make Puking Santa websites. That's a very vivid image to me. And he's really right. And so part of, too, what we want to share with you in this presentation is also kind of inspiring or thinking about what can we also do to put artistry into the web and what we're doing, because social media is so hungry for content. Absolutely a beast. Of course, venture capitalists want to capitalize on your content, but all this content has to go somewhere. We've got to give it a wrapper, and hopefully some of us can step back and make it beautiful or make it artistic, and it's guys like this, like Kevin and people in the room. So you want to talk a little about what Gregor's just saying there?
I think we've really hit that, especially with the comments that people made, especially the one site that was just going to be badges of social media networks. I mean, that's what Gregors is talking about, and we kind of, we let that happen sometimes. So it's time to take the reins again, time to push back, and we're the experts in the room.
Right, and I mean, one of the things that I do on our client side, of course we're an agency, so we have to list our client to show our cred. I don't link to any of my clients because I don't know what they're going to do after a year later, and you go back and you're like, they brought that comp from hell back, right? Where did that come from? Some other agency came in and picked the 4 times ago comp and built it. It's just crazy to see what can happen when you put all that effort. And I think also as we go through the career, you kind of realize that what we do all goes into the ether, and we don't make anything solid and real in the terms, it is real in bits, but in the terms of something like this, where this is in the physical world and people writing it and touching it every day, and they made this to what we're doing, which can change with the next management come in, or the next leadership change, or the next client, or the next budget. So anyway,
need to move.
Puking Santa websites.
Yeah.
As you guys can tell, we can talk about this stuff all day long. So overcomplicated gets creepy, and please fire some more questions for you. This is a bit of a sideline in the conversation, but I want to get people thinking about this. Dana Boyd talked about it at South by Southwest. So I'm on PBS.org, and there's a lot of stuff going on PBS. I was looking for a new series they're doing on Buddha. It's a great show, and I wanted to find the schedule. So I come in and I notice down here in the right corner. I keep blinding myself when I turn this on. Right here, over here is a Facebook fan widget thing that says PBS has 218,246,000 fans. 2 of them I happen to know. That's Brian Oberkirk, a colleague of mine, and Christina Halverson. And I'm like, what is Christina Halverson's face doing on PBS.org? Is she part? What is this? And then I kind of figure it out, and I'm like, wait a second. Where is this coming from? Facebook is tracking me on PBS? Absolutely they are. So I flame PBS on Twitter, at pbs.org. What the hell? What are you monetizing my viewing of pbs.org? For what are you doing that? Why are you doing that? I didn't ask you to share that with me. Who are these people? And so they come back and say, oh, it's just a widget. It's a default widget. We put it up there. And if you're a fan of PBS, you get to see fans of yours that are, and we can click through. My first response is, well, I'm not a fan of PBS. This is a little creepy, and I guarantee you someone's going to game this. Right? You are going to get goatsy on pbs.org sometime in the future. Or someone's going to, buy shoes now, shirt up there. So we got to get moving, but I did want to share it. And just give me just a quick poll. Are you guys getting creeped out by sharing your content across networks and think that you're getting over monetized? Is this just, am I getting paranoid? Okay. And hey, it's perfectly cool with me if people are going to do that, but I specifically locked Facebook down. I don't want Facebook doing anything. I just want to share with my friends. After I lock it down, I go on to pbs.org and they're showing me my friends. Guaranteed they're monetizing that. Maybe PBS isn't. I don't think PBS is doing anything nefarious other than adding a widget to their website. But boom, it really weirded me out. So little privacy rant over. We can move on. Do you want to add to this?
No, I think we get the next couple of slides. So we've talked about this from the badges of courage on the side, the Flickr, Twitter buttons, and in fact, that was our own county's website in Seattle, and they actually didn't go anywhere until this week. So it's kind of like they slapped them on it. Oh, we need to be on there, but it didn't add to the content. It didn't add to the message of King County. It just was kind of there, and it's because someone had that idea, and no one said, "Well, do we really need it? What's the value in adding that to our homepage?" There was none, and especially because I'm the guy who likes to click. It's like, oh, they're on Twitter. It's like, what are they saying? It's like, there's nothing. There was no Twitter feed at all.
Just the button right there.
Just a button, blank button. That's it.
And someone designed a button. It wasn't just a widget they grabbed off a share this function. So.
Yeah. So when designing for simplicity, designing the ordinary, 2 years ago, mobile took a huge jump. And I think that's been the best thing for our industry because it's now forcing us to really strip things down to make it to, when we build mobile sites and mobile apps, you pare it down to the context. You pare it down to just the essentials. Now if we take that back to the web, how can we take what we're learning with mobile, what we're learning with the architecture and the design and the simplicity and just making things so useful, how do we take that back to the web? And I think mobile is going to provide the best example for us moving forward as designers and developers for websites because it forces us to think taking away, reduction, thoughtful reduction, like the Fixie, creating interactions of quality instead of just slapping stuff together. And if you've never gone into mobile, if you've never looked at mobile, I really encourage you to kind of take a look, take a seat, try your hand at it, try like creating a mobile site and see, oh, wait a minute, do we really need this page? And then take that out to your other site. It's like, okay, well, we reduced everything down, so hey, does this work for the website? Chances are, it might do that.
Right. As we're running this down, any more questions? We've got about 3 minutes to go, and I have a little giveaway. Want to pop anybody else a client story? Yes?
Just a follow-up to the, how do you involve the client who makes his own GeoCities site and who's on your project, dictating things, feel involved in the design without feeling like you're schooling them?
My wife's a travel manager for a foundation, and they have a travel program to manage their expenses. Most of their travelers go out to Expedia and come back and say, I found a better fare on Expedia. Well, that isn't what you hired us for. What we're going to do, I think that problem is I want to make you a rock star. That's why you hired us. Let us help you be a rock star. We'll be behind the scenes making you rock, and here's how we can show you how to do it. Is my answer to that. And I don't think it's very easy, and we get into situations like we have online today.
Yeah, and for me, it's a lot of asking questions. It's a lot of talking to them. In our line of work, we tend to be business psychologists. And so we let them vent, we let them talk about this, and then we kind of come back. It's like, this is what I heard. This is what I hear you saying. It's like, you want this, is this? Well, these are the questions. Like, well, why do you want this? And you start really kind of working them into the answers of like why they really want things. And then you can come back to them and say, like, this is how we're going to make you rock. This is how we're going to make you stand out. And a lot of times it could be very different from their initial thoughts because they just think, oh, I need a website and I need these widgets too. Like, wait a minute, no, I need I need a coherent message. Yeah.
Right.
And nailing that and then nailing design around that is perfect.
Which is more than, hey, we got to be on Facebook. Because it's interesting, some of our clients, they didn't know that Facebook was a roach motel, that when you go in, you can't get out. And they also, and I felt like, geez, I should have explained this to you. So you realize anything you publish to Facebook, they own, right? Well, what do you mean? So if you go to an event and you take a bunch of photos of your great sales event and you launched a new product and it's an energy bar and everybody's excited about it, you upload it, they own them. They can monetize them. They can do what they want with them. They can put them on a banner at Times Square and have people look at them, right? No, I had no idea. Because they're just so excited about being able to connect with their fans. They didn't really think that, geez, what am I doing with all this content? And my job failed as an agency guy was explaining it to them. Hey, you really got to think about what we're doing here. All right, yes?
That's interesting. Clients, they want pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But you see, what's the brand that you most admire?
Correct.
Let's say it's Apple, let's say it's Google.
Yep.
Are they on Facebook? Do they have blogs? Do they have Twitter?
Yep.
No. They have elegant design, they have great products. Why don't you do the same? It's so obvious. I mean, the brands that you admire the most, why
Yes.
don't you try to be like them?
Correct.
Instead of being like everybody else.
Yeah.
People tend to forget that.
I absolutely agree, and I got about 30 seconds. I don't know how this conference runs. I don't think we can go over. If anybody, like I said,
You can come up and ask us some questions.
I'll talk about this stuff
or
all day
ask
long.
us in the hallway as well.
I'll be riding this bike around the conference later today, but so I just want to leave you with this quote. Excuse me while I get off this clue train. It's taking me to marketing time. The clue train manifesto was used to describe early blogging, and a lament I have also with design is, we didn't build these tools for SEO and marketing to take over. They have. It's natural because we made it easy for them so they can come in. Let's wrest that back. Let's take these tools back and do some cool stuff and make beautiful design and websites. I know we can do it. You've got the talent in the room right now. And so what I want to do before we wrap this up, and thank you all for coming, is I've got a book to give away, and I'm going to give it away to the person who came the farthest for this conference. Who came here from New Zealand or something crazy like that? Actually New Zealand? Yep. Can you speak, please, so we know you're not making it up?
I'm an American, but I live in New Zealand.
Did you come here from New Zealand? I did. Okay, you win. All right.
That was easy.
All right, guys, so I think that's it. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.